You're on in one, two, three, go. What's up, YouTubers? It's your boy Red Crimson 102, aka Red Crimson Gaming. The Switch midnight launch has came and it went. The Switch is finally here. I know you all see my Switch pyramid right here in the background. Take a good look at it. It's finally here. Now, everybody that has their hands on this console, everybody that waited in line for this console, are loving the console. They're loving the games. And that's what's up, as they should. The system has been long anticipated. We waited for this system for several years. This system was supposed to be launched back in the Nintendo Switch OLED days, maybe 2-3 years ago. But the long wait is over. It's finally here. And people who have it in their hands are just really loving the system. And they are appreciating the system. So I spent a lot of time actually watching YouTube videos just to see what the community thinks of the Nintendo Switch 2. And boy, there is a lot of haters, man. I can't believe people actually make dedicated channels to try to sway people from not buying the system. So many haters. And we saw the same thing happen with the OG Switch. People didn't know what it was. People hated on it. Actually, it was clear cut. We knew what it was, a hybrid console, a handheld, and a console you can attach to your TV, and people still hated on it, but they still went out and bought it, and it sold gangbusters. 152 million currently. The Nintendo Switch sits at, and the Switch itself, all the hate it has been getting has actually sold 3 million in 24 hours. This has been the biggest launch ever for a console. Nintendo said they were going to do just that. They said they were going to provide enough consoles for everybody to get to deter people from turning to eBay and buying $1,000 units from scalpers. So Nintendo produced enough units for every man, woman, and child to walk into their local retailer and just pick the system up. And as I'm speaking, the system has been sold out all over. I just came from Target. Shelves are empty. There are no Nintendo Switches in sight. Only thing I saw was a few cameras. That's about it. Even the Pro 2 controller is sold out. So let's talk about the videos that I've been seeing on YouTube. Now, people have been making hate videos on Nintendo Switch, deterring people not to get the system. Oh, it's terrible. It's a Switch Pro. The games are $80, spreading false information. But at the same time, none of that really mattered in the real world. None of that mattered in real time, because that Best Buy line was crazy. Best Buy had two lines. They had a pre-order line and they had a walk-in line. The walk-in line was a lot longer than the pre-order line. The line actually wrapped around the store from the beginning of the store all the way to the back. I almost forgot that my local Best Buy even had a back. I'm so used to seeing the front. All the years I've been living in my area, I've never seen the back of Best Buy. But I did a walkthrough with my camera, and it wrapped around to the back of the building where they make deliveries, where the dumpsters are. Now that's crazy. Wrapped around all the way to the front of the building, to the back of the building where the loading dock is. That is crazy. GameStop also had a very long line. But anyway, so I've seen people making videos on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's crazy how they have opinions on the Nintendo Switch 2, but they don't even own the system. They're just watching these videos and they're going off what everybody else is saying instead of their own reconnaissance, getting the system, playing it, and having their own opinion about it. I saw a guy, man, I was watching this video earlier today, and he had everything under his mother's name to say about a Nintendo Switch 2, and this man didn't even have a Switch 2. He's saying, oh, this is not even a big upgrade. It's just an update to the OG Switch. Okay, that could mean a lot of things. I mean, what do you mean by updates? You have small updates and you have big updates. So, I mean, you have to make that clear. I don't really understand, because anybody in their right mind that has a Nintendo Switch 2 and spent some time with it can see this is actually a significant upgrade. I mean, the system has a camera where you can do video chat with your friends. And not only video chat with your friends, you can see your friends playing the game as well as they can see you playing the game at the same time on the same screen. Now, that to me is a game changer. I like that feature. Even on the Xbox consoles right now, you couldn't even do that. But Nintendo allows you, the players, to see their friends in real time and their reactions while playing the game on the video chat. Now that is awesome. And what's another thing that's awesome about that too, you can also use third-party cameras on the Nintendo Switch. And this is the first for Nintendo, because Nintendo is a exclusive proprietary company, just like Apple. Like, they encourage you to use only their products, but Nintendo is a little bit more open this time around, where you can actually use a third-party camera on your Nintendo Switch instead of the camera they provide for you, which is about $55 now. And for what they provide, it's actually a really, really good camera. It's not the best quality, and it's not terrible as well. But for the price, for what they sold you this camera for, it's actually really good. So if you're on a budget and you want to do video chat with your friends, the camera is a good option from Nintendo. But I would get the official Nintendo camera. The one from Hurry, I love Hurry. They make good products, but that's a 480p camera. I can only imagine what that thing looks like quality wise in real time. So I would just get the standard camera that Nintendo provides for us. It's sufficient. I have no complaints about it. It's not the best, but you can see what your friends are doing and vice versa. Now, I have a 1080p PC camera, and this whole time I actually thought it was a 4K camera, but obviously it's not. But my 1080p PC camera, I connected it to my Nintendo Switch 2, and lo and behold, it was actually a lot decent, better quality than the Nintendo camera that they provided. So my camera is a step up from the Nintendo camera, but I would love to connect a 4K camera to this thing and see how it fares out, man. But I just don't understand these guys, man, these grown men making channels, dedicated channels, that hating on the Nintendo Switch 2. So obviously they're just upset. To me, they're upset that the Nintendo Switch 2 is getting more buzz than their favorite console and is going to outsell their favorite console. Because if there's a better console out there that you enjoy more than the Switch, you wouldn't have time to be talking about the Nintendo Switch, especially talking about a console you have never played. You're just going off what everybody else on YouTube says. And thank goodness, just like I've been telling you guys in my past videos, social media is not the real world. Social media is actually basically those losers who doesn't get accepted in the real world. So they go online where they get accepted. People will give them compliments, no matter if they look fat, they're skinny, they're ugly, whatever the case may be, and support their silly opinions, even if it doesn't make sense. So that's why these losers in real life, they run to the internet to get validation from people like themselves, who are going to one-up them on their negative behavior and their negative backlash towards anything, but in this regards, the Nintendo Switch. But in real life, in real time, people are loving the Nintendo Switch 2, and they are enjoying it. Is it perfect? Of course not. There's things Nintendo could have done a lot better, but we're neither here nor there. We have a new Nintendo president, and I'm pretty sure I can't even make any excuses for him. He's more of a businessman versus a gamer, and that can be a problem in the long run. But you know, the system is new, and Nintendo has plenty of time to pivot over to making this console be the best that it can be. Now, for those haters out there that's saying it's just an update to the Nintendo Switch 2, that's actually not a bad thing. But to be clear, this is a huge step up from the OG Nintendo Switch in every single way. This is not a Switch Pro. This is definitely a much bigger leap, because you can play the same games you can play on your PS5, your Series X, and PC on this console, and the difference in parity isn't that far off. Some games look the same. Sometimes, you know, the other systems may look a teeny bit better, but you really can't see the big difference. For the Nintendo Switch 2 games to look just as good as a PC, a PS5, that's really saying a lot. That just goes to show you that Nintendo is in the best position that they can be, because right now there is no huge graphical leap. In the past 10 years, there wasn't since the Xbox One. All the games look the same. So it's all about making sure the Nintendo Switch 2 can run these games a lot better than they used to run on the OG Switch. A problem I had with the old Switch, it wasn't really a problem, but after a while, I'm like, okay, you know what? The Switch is getting long in its tooth, and we need to move on. like the lower scale games, the AA games and the indie games, you know, a lot of those games ran well, and sometimes developers would get lazy. Those indie developers would get lazy as well too, and the game may not be in 60 FPS. But now Nintendo put a lot more juice under the hood, CPU wise and GPU wise, and it definitely has more RAM. And Nintendo even went as far as going using up three RAM separated just for the system memory alone, and I think they dropped it down to 1 or 2 gigs of RAM. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere along that line. I know Nintendo made a few adjustments, and at first 3 gigs of RAM, excuse me guys, was dedicated to the CPU, the UI, and 9 gigs of RAM was left over for developers to play around with the games, which is pretty much plenty efficient to make games look and run well. But Nintendo went a step further and they said, you know what, we're gonna lock it, we're gonna drop it down to maybe 1 or 2 gigs of RAM for the UI, and that way the Switch has more RAM to work with. But anyway, the Switch uses more RAM than the Series S, so the game should look and run better in theory. So my thoughts of the system so far, my hands-on time, it's definitely not a Switch Pro. This is a big step up. It's a next generation Switch. The material, the build on the system, so the system is nice and sleek. Yes, it does look just like the OG Switch, but even at first glance, you can tell this is a more premium product. The Joy-Cons are a lot bigger. The stand is cool. I've seen somebody complaining about the stand that they can easily break this. I don't see how. I think it's actually going to be a lot harder to break this because there's no space. Actually, there's nothing solid in between where you can accidentally break it. So I don't see how. It has a lot of resistance to it. The hinges, it has USB-C at the bottom, as you can see. You have a USB-C at the top, so that's 2 USB-Cs. The console, it's a very solid build, a very premium build. It doesn't feel like a cheap prototype like the launch model Nintendo Switch felt like. Even the red box model Nintendo Switch. This is the best looking and best feeling Switch that Nintendo has ever came out with. It's definitely premium. You can feel it. The buttons are a lot bigger on the Joy-Cons. And look how big my hands are, but I can definitely hold a Joy-Con in my hand with no issues. Like, it's not small anymore. Look at this. Look how big my hand is. But the Switch Joy-Con is bigger now. It's more comfortable. It snaps on easy. Love the system. Yeah, so I tried a few games actually. I saw a lot of videos on YouTube, people trying the old Nintendo Switch library games and Nintendo Switch 2 to see how they look and ran. And what I've noticed about the Nintendo Switch 2, if it doesn't have an update from the developers, the games aren't going to be optimized. Meaning, if a game was 30 FPS with drop frames on the OG Switch, it's not going to magically upscale to 60 frames per second. It's not going to magically put the game in 1080p or 1440p. But the games will run at the solid frame rate that they originally wanted it to run on the OG Switch. For example, if a game was 30 FPS but it had drop frames, it would drop all the way down into the 20s. The Nintendo Switch 2 will grab that frame rate and lock it down to a solid 30. And whatever resolution it ran in on the OG Switch, even if it's 540p, the Nintendo Switch 2 will automatically clean it up to the best that it can. It's not going to look 1080p, 720p. Some games do see a significant resolution boost, but for the most part, the Nintendo Switch 2, playing the OG Nintendo Switch games, it just stabilizes everything. You're going to get the stable frame rate that originally the developers wanted it to be at, and you're going to get that stable resolution developers wanted it to be at, resolution wise and frame rate wise. So you won't have drop frames, you just have a solid 30 frames if it was 30 FPS on the OG Switch with drop frames. Now, if developers come out with an update, they show that game some love, they can all come out with a patch to make those old Switch games go from 540p, 720p to 4K, 1440p, 60 frames per second. But they will have to release a patch for that. Without a patch, the games just run more stable. That's about it. Some games more so than the others. Some games may take a step further and the games may run in 1080p. And, well, I don't know about 60 frames. I don't know about that. Somebody have to correct me on that. But it will definitely run a lot better. You will not have drop frames on a Nintendo Switch 2. I tried Ninja Gaiden 3, for example, on my Switch 2, ignoring the update, and it actually ran really good. It didn't drop any frames. So there you go. But I think all developers should come out with a patch to patch their games and have it running in higher resolution and higher frame rate. I'm more so concerned about the frame rate. I want to see all my Nintendo Switch games that were 30 frames per second be 60 frames per second. That's all I ask for. I've seen The Witcher 3 gameplay on that on the Nintendo Switch 2, and the game did look better and it ran better. It wasn't 60 frames per second, but the game ran at, I believe it ran above 30 FPS if I'm correct. But visually it did look a lot better, and it definitely ran a lot better. It ran higher than 30 frames. It wasn't 60, maybe around 35, 40 frames probably, but it ran and looked a lot better, which is good. But I think CD Projekt Red should come out with a Nintendo Switch version for that game and have it, look on par and play on par with the PS5 and Xbox Series console versions. And I know they can definitely do that. So my thoughts on the Switch 2 so far is good. It's positive. I'm happy with my purchase. And the people that's hating on the Nintendo Switch 2 are basically people who just do not want to see Nintendo succeed. They don't like the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is in the limelight right now. They're getting all these praises and it's outshining their favorite system. That's all it is. It's a good system. I don't think it's a Switch Pro, and I just can't see why people will call it a Switch Pro. The only reason I could give them the benefit of the doubt, the UI is pretty much the same. The icons are the same. The setup is the same. But if you look a little bit closer, they tweaked a lot of settings. A lot of things look a little bit different. The UI even looks a little bit different. Even the game icons, they're more rounded at the edges versus being squared off like on the OG Switch. Now, let's talk about the eShop. The eShop has been getting a lot of praise. It's a lot faster and all that. And it is. The eShop is a lot faster. It loads faster and it moves faster. Nintendo really needed to do this with the extra gigs of RAM that they have, the higher CPU. They can definitely do this, but it's still not perfect. The system still has kinks, because even when I went into the eShop and it did load it up fast, there were times where it took a good while to load. There were times where even when I was in the eShop, you didn't see anything and everything took its time to load in, and even navigating it kind of took its time as well. And it'll freeze on you, especially if you're watching a video. If you hover the icon over a game, and it will kick you out, you get an error message. I've gotten an error message several times. And also too, when I tried downloading the GameCube app, I kept getting the error message and it will kick me out of the eShop. So from my point of view, I still think that the Nintendo Switch eShop is running on a JavaScript page, just like the OG Switch, but because of the extra, more powerful CPU, GPU, and gigs of RAM, it pretty much just makes it run faster. But you get what I'm saying, guys? So I think it's still the same. It's running on the same scripted Java page as the OG Switch, but the extra juice underneath the hood of the Nintendo Switch 2, because it is powerful, it just makes it run faster. That's about it. And it did make some tweaks. You don't have to go all the way over to the right and click on your icon to get to your wish list. I got so used to that. Now your wish list is part of the category that's on the left side of the screen when you log into the eShop. So all the categories as well as your wish list are now on the left side of the screen, which is a good thing, which is cool. It just depends on how you look at it. And the eShop looks a little bit more organized now. It's broken down into categories, and I kind of found it hard because I'm so used to the OG Switch where you just go to recent releases and like it just shows you the list of games and you just keep scrolling down forever. But it's a little bit different on the Switch 2. You definitely have to like click on like load more or whatever. But all in all, I would say it's funny. Yes, it's faster than the original Switch eShop, but it has its issues because I've never really been kicked out of the original Switch eShop before. But on the Switch 2, I have several times. You have your moments where things load up and it's snappy and it's fast. And then you have moments where the video lags. It doesn't play. It takes a long time to display the games. Sometimes it doesn't scroll fast enough and it seems like it's loading and it kicks you out. So actually I have more problems with the Switch 2 eShop than I did with the OG Switch. The only difference is it's a lot faster on the Switch 2. But overall, it's good. It's snappier. It's faster. Nintendo has plenty of time to rectify this to the point where it runs silky smooth and fast all the time, where the video's not lagging and you're not getting kicked out of the eShop. So overall, I like the Switch. The Joy-Cons are much better. They're bigger. They fit my man hands. The buttons are bigger. The joysticks are definitely better. The Joy-Cons are significantly in every way better than the OG Switch. Now, the issue I have with the Joy-Cons, a lot of people say the Rumble is better. I don't think so. I feel like the Rumble is a lot softer and lighter than it was on the OG Switch. On the OG Switch, Nintendo and third parties, they rarely even use the Rumble, the HD Rumble. But when they did use it, it was a very strong Rumble and you can feel it. It just felt different too, especially if they wanted you to, especially depending on the game you're playing, if they want the game to, if they want the Joy-Cons to rumble a certain way, feel a certain way, they pull it off really good. Especially with the 1, 2, 3 switch where you had to guess how many balls are in it, like you can literally feel the difference. That was very amazing to me. But I think the Rumble to me is not as good as the Rumble was on the OG Joy-Cons. And they're a lot softer, they're a lot lighter. Maybe it was just a game I was playing, but that's just how I feel. I feel like it was a step back. The only difference is they use the Rumble a lot more now with the Switch 2, which is a good thing. That's what we always wanted. But I think the Rumble feels like a step back, like power-wise, than the OG Switch, if that makes any sense. The Rumble is a lot weaker. That's what I wanted to say. I feel as if the Rumble is a lot weaker on the Switch 2 Joy-Cons versus the Switch 1 Joy-Cons. Now, the battery life so far that I've been playing it seemed like it's just as good as the OG Switch battery Joy-Cons. Fun fact, my Joy-Cons on my OG Switch never died on me before. Ever. Since I had my Switch. Never. And I've seen a teardown on YouTube, and actually the Switch 2 uses a lower battery than the OG Switch. So the OG Switch uses a bigger battery. But so far I haven't lose any power with the Joy-Cons on the Switch 2. The low battery never really caught up to me. So it's safe to say, even though the battery is a lot lesser than the battery in the OG Switch Joy-Cons, it mounts out to being the same time as far as using it. It never died on me. It stayed full even when I was using it. But I love the new Joy-Cons. I have no issues with them. Actually taking them apart like this and playing them separately in both hands actually is a lot more satisfying than it was on an OG Switch, believe it or not. I really enjoy playing using the Joy-Cons loosely this time around than I did on the OG Switch, and that's saying a lot. Like, a lot of people hated the OG Joy-Cons. I never really had a problem with them. Yes, they were small and the buttons were small, but for some strange reason, it worked out well for me, and I was one of those guys that didn't complain. But was there room for improvement? Of course, there always is. And that's exactly what they did with the Joy-Con 2s for the Nintendo Switch 2. I love these things. And for those of you all out there that are wondering, should you get the Switch Pro 2 controller? Yes. If you have the money for it, extra cash to spend, yes. But if you don't, or you rather take that money, you have to choose between buying a Switch 2 Pro controller and the game, I would get the game. It's always good to have extra games over an extra controller, right? So the Pro controller is just for if you have extra cash to spend. And let's not forget, you can also use your OG Switch Pro controller from your Nintendo Switch from 2017 on the new one. You just can't use the wake up function. So keep that in mind. So if you want to use the wake up function on the controller, you do have to get the Pro 2 controller. But you can use your old Pro controller from the previous Switch on the new Switch 2. Now, the Joy-Con controllers, before I move on, they're a lot better. You don't need a Pro controller. And the charge brick that comes with it, you can attach it and you can play your games just like that with no issues. I had no issues. So if you didn't like the Joy-Cons from the first Nintendo Switch, you will love them on the second one. And they made it to a point where it's not even mandatory to get a Pro controller. Now, as far as a Pro controller goes, I'm glad I bought it. Really, I am. You know, I didn't listen to those guys saying, oh, you can use your old Nintendo Switch Pro controller on there. And they're right. But if you have the Pro 2 controller, which I do right here, it's a beautiful thing. It's so much better than the Pro controller. And there was talking about this in the Nintendo Switch 2 events that we all watched on YouTube. And it just, you know, made my imagination run wild. I said, wow, is it really that much better where I need to buy it? And you know what, guys, it is. If you had the extra cash, you buy the Pro 2 controller, you will not be disappointed. It's better in every way. The feel of it is so premium, I can't even get over it. I honestly do think this is the best Pro controller Nintendo made. Actually, to be frank, this is the best controller Nintendo have made. I would definitely go out on a whim and say that. And if you want to compare all three Pro controllers, because remember the Wii U had a Pro controller, and so did the Nintendo Switch, and now the Switch 2. The Switch 2 has the best Pro controller, and the Pro 2 controller, out of every single Nintendo platforms they have made, hands down is the best controller. Didn't get a chance to check out the D-pad really, but just by the feel of it, I can tell it's already better. The analog sticks, the drift, let's not mention that word drift, the glide sticks. Glide doesn't sound too much different from drift, but the new glide sticks that are the Pro controller 2 is butter. It's love. It has a slight, it's kind of funny, it has a slight resistance to it, and the same time it feels like there's no resistance. So let me guys, let me not confuse you all. It has a slight resistance to it, but it's a special kind of resistance. That's why I kind of fumbled a little bit there when trying to explain it to you guys. But the glide sticks are next level. I've even heard people say that these are the best joysticks on a controller. And I can agree with that. I was very impressed with the Pro 2 controller. I cannot stress how good it is. The bill of material, the way how it feels, it has a feel to it, like the texture on it. It's like almost like a smooth, rough texture at the same time, if that makes any sense. I really can't put my hands on it. Not rough like a sandpaper, man, but it just has its own feel. I love the textures on it. The texture is what's going to get you once you feel the controller and hold it in your hands. The buttons are great. Shoulder buttons, I have no issue with shoulder buttons. The face buttons I really like. And the minus and plus buttons, the camera buttons, the chat buttons, they all have their own feel and it just feels premium. I really cannot explain it, but guys, believe me when I tell you, this is actually, I feel like this is one of the best controllers I've ever held. It's definitely a lot better than the Xbox controller. It's definitely better than the PlayStation controller, the DualSense controller. It's just the best controller, man. It's really that good. They really improved the Pro controller, and I didn't know that they could even do better than that, but they actually did. Like it's a perfect controller. I love it, man. It's a great controller. The battery life, can't really speak on the battery life because I didn't use it all day. I didn't use it for 24 hours, so I don't know. I know the Switch 2 Pro controller, if I let it sit in my drawer for a good bit, it will die on you. So I always have to charge the Switch 2 controller. But in practice, if you're using the Switch 2 Pro controller on a full charge, it'll last you all day, every day, probably even to the next day, honestly. But the Pro controller, if you have the extra cash, I would get it. If you don't, the Joy-Cons is good enough on its own, and that's about it. So, didn't play a lot of games. I played Fast Fusion. Great game. I love the series. Anyway, I've been following it since, actually, I started playing Fast RMX. That's the title I started off with. And I went back and got the Wii U version and the Wii version. But Fast Fusion is good. You can play that game 4K, 30 FPS, 4K, 60 FPS, 1440p, 60 FPS. And Shin'en also said, which are the creators of the game, they say they're going to come out with a patch to play the game in 4K 120 frames. Now, listen, remember, the Nintendo Switch 2 screen is an HDR screen with VRR, 120 FPS, right? And, man, playing that game on the handheld, I thought it was already in 120 FPS. It was already butter smooth, man. I couldn't believe it. So I kind of, it's almost like you're not going to miss a 120 FPS mode of Fast Fusion because the game is already silky smooth, man. I don't even know if they could make it smoother than that, but by them saying they're going to come out with a 120 FPS patch in handheld mode, wow. I mean, I'm all for it. I like to experience it, but the game is already butter smooth. It's responsive. It's smooth. You can see the smoothness and you can feel how smooth it is. So that screen is the real deal. I haven't tried Cyberpunk yet. I've been watching so many gameplay on that game. It looks and runs great, especially performance mode, which gives you 40 FPS. I mean, I have to experience it for myself, but from what I've seen, the game looks and runs good. And fun fact, Cyberpunk runs the best on Nintendo Switch compared to all last gen systems. So that's from PS4, even PS4 Pro, going all the way back to the standard PS4 and the standard Xbox One, which I heard ran like crap. I have them, but I never played them on there. I started off on the PC, so there you go. I have Rune Factory, Gardens of Azuma. Haven't played that game yet. It looked very interesting from the gameplay I've seen. I'm not too big on the farming part, but as far as like fighting and the gameplay, it looks pretty good. Excuse me. There's a few games I wanted to pick up. It's funny because I said I was gonna not spend so much money and I'm gonna watch what I purchased for the Nintendo Switch, not go too crazy like I did with the OG Switch. But now, man, that I'm so impressed with the Switch, man, I'm loving it. It's kind of like I want to pick up all the launch titles. And I've seen people on YouTube, they bought every single Nintendo Switch 2 game that was available. And from what I've seen and from what I played, I don't blame them. I kind of feel the same way. I kind of feel like I should pick up all the games, but that's neither here nor there. It's not that serious, but so far I have Cyberpunk, Gardens of Azuma, Fast Fusion, and I did recently pick up Split Fiction, that's a game I always wanted to play. I almost bought it on the PS5. It's a game where I wanted to play with my daughter. So, and I didn't like how the Nintendo Switch version was 30 FPS. And I thought we were done with that. And that's, I mean, the Switch 2 shouldn't have any 30 FPS games. I think all games on Nintendo Switch going forward should be 60 frames per second, which kind of tells me I don't think the system is weak. It's just that developers, I feel as if they're being lazy and they're just trying to get their games out there instead of optimizing it like they should. Because Hitman is now 60 FPS. There's a few games that's not 60 FPS on Switch 2 that should be. That's 60 FPS even on the Series S, which again lets me know that they're not optimizing the games properly for the Nintendo Switch. And I think that's when Nintendo need to come in and say, hey, this game needs to be 60 FPS. Honestly, because if it's not going to be 60 FPS, what's the point? I know it's a handheld, but on the other handhelds, the PC handhelds, which the Switch is more powerful, then they're running the games at 60 FPS. So there should be no excuse why the Switch 2 is running these games at 30 FPS. But I watched some gameplay footage straight through, and from what I've seen, even Split Fiction, even though it's 30 FPS, it runs silky butter smooth on the Nintendo Switch. At least from what I've seen. I have to reserve judgment until I myself play the game, but from what I've seen, it's a smooth 30. It does not drop underneath 30, which is a good thing. And I've seen it go from 30 to like, 35. I'm not sure if it had hit 40 at one point, but you're not getting anything less than 30. 30 is just solid. It's a solid 30. And then it only goes up from there. So it's a very, very refresh rate type of thing. But it's better than having less than 30 FPS, and it just looks smooth from what I've seen. So I decided to take the plunge and say, okay, let me just get it. I love the Switch, and the Switch was my primary console last generation, and still is right now. Well, I guess the Switch 2 is. Well, I use both, so I use both. I'm not going to transfer all my library to the Nintendo Switch 2. That's kind of silly because I want to reserve all the space on the Switch 2 for only Switch 2 games. I don't want to bombard it with Switch 1 games that are slightly better or just running a solid 30 FPS. So I still utilize my old Switch, but games that can run better on the Switch 2 that I would play on my Switch 1, then yes, I just play on the Switch 2. But other than that, whatever games I have on my Switch, I'm going to just keep it on there, and I play my Switch OLED for certain games and reserve the Switch 2 for only Switch 2 games and sometimes OG Switch games. So that's where I'm at right now. So this has been a long video, guys. I always try to make my videos short. I don't know how some of these people do it on YouTube. They make these short videos and get their point across, but I guess I try to cram everything into one video. But at least I hope I'm at least entertaining you guys and keeping it real, because that's all I do is keep it real. I don't like to cut corners. Now, I spoke about all the positives, so let's talk about the negatives, like what I don't like about the system. Now, it's not really that much that I do not like about the system. I think the system is great. So I really have to try and think about the negative stuff. But I would just say this. Nintendo had 8 years to make the system the best that it can be. I'ma just say that. So for them to take 8 years and make this system, it really shouldn't have any kinks or flaws. I feel as if the eShop, for example, it shouldn't have any error messages. It shouldn't kick me out. I shouldn't have any problem downloading games. And there should be no lag. And I experienced lag and the eShop kicking me out. So the eShop is not perfect. So there should be no excuse why it shouldn't be perfect, because they had 8 years to figure this out. And I also felt like Nintendo, they cheaped out on RAM. I think they should have went with 16 gigs of RAM. I've never heard of 12 gigs of RAM. That's really odd. Because even a computer, you have to pair the RAMs up. You can't use 12 gigs. You have to use either 8, 16, or 32 or 64. So them using 12 gigs of RAM is kind of crazy to me, because if you know you wanted to do video chat and then have memory reserved for the UI and games, you should just went with 16 as a standard. I mean, come on, like, you're gonna make your money, Nintendo. Just take that loss. They're not even taking a loss, but 16 gigs of RAM should have been the standard. That way, even if they wanted to utilize 3 gigs of RAM to the side for the Nintendo Switch UI, you still have plenty of RAM left over for games. It should have been 16. The ROG Ally X, and I get it, like, that's a PC handheld. PC, you do multitasking, so that's where the extra gigs of RAM comes in. But when it comes to video games, you don't need 24 gigs of RAM. So I get that. I understand that part. But I think they should have made a switch to 16 gigs of RAM, or at least a little bit more than 16. If they do make another switch, I think they should up the RAM from either 16 to 24. 24 sounds more like it, because the switch 2 should have been already 16 gigs of RAM, so the next switch shouldn't be 16. Might as well just go ahead and skip over 16 and go straight to 24, because these games on the PS5 and you have PS6 around the corner are going to get bigger and better and better, and you're going to need more RAM. So better to be future proof than not to be. So yeah, that's the second problem I had with the Nintendo Switch. Like, they should have used more RAM. They wouldn't have to worry about splitting the RAM to make the camera look smoother, the voice chat look smoother, and not have memory shortage with the Nintendo Switch 2 games due to the split of the RAM between the UI, well, system memory, and the games themselves. So yeah, and another thing is, I think they should have. I had no issues with the UI on the OG Switch. I get it, but this is a new system, so there's no excuse. You have to go all out. So I believe they should have revamped the UI, sort of like PlayStation did, going from the PS3 to the PS4 and even the PS5. It was similar, but you can tell it was different. And we should have had themes off the break. There should be ways where we can connect the Switch to the computer, or put a memory card in there and use our own custom themes. But themes should have been a thing out of the gate for the Nintendo Switch, no question asked. And when you hover your icon, well, the cursor over the icon of the games, they should display a big page showing that game, sort of like how Xbox and especially PlayStation does it. That's what they should have done. At least to get a system a newer feel, like, yo, you know what, this actually feels like a next gen system. But they didn't do that. They still have time to get that done with the updates. So that's cool. The third thing I didn't like, it's not a big deal, but it still falls into, yo, you had 8 years to figure this out, Nintendo. What I didn't like was the sound. The sound, I do like how the sound is loud on the Nintendo Switch. It's a lot louder than the OG Switch, so that's saying a whole lot in itself. I've heard people say it's loud, but it didn't have any bass. I thought that was kind of funny, but okay, fine, cool. Yeah, the sound is a lot louder and everything. Now the headphones, when I plugged the headphones in, it was low, especially when I plugged it into the dock. But it could have been my setup, maybe because I was using a Sony headphone. I tried to use this DualSense headset, so maybe that's what it was. I used my Beats headphones on there, not natively, because I do have a dongle. I have a USB-C dongle, sound dongle, that I was using for my OG Switch, and man, it makes your Switch sound next level, like you're actually there. I think it's made by Skull and Co. They make really good products. They have a sound adapter for the Nintendo Switch, and it makes it sound phenomenal. And I tried using that on my Nintendo Switch too. It did work, and I used my Beats headset on there, and yeah, it was loud. It was good. I'm still doing testing, really, but so far I think the sound is better on the Nintendo Switch, the original OLED Nintendo Switch, while using that adapter and those headphones. So I'm trying to get that same setup, that same feeling with a Nintendo Switch 2. The sound is good, don't get me wrong, guys, but I'm still experimenting. But so far, I'm like, yo, I expected to sound a lot better because they advertised that during the direct that they have improved spatial sound. So, but if my Sony headphones sound good on there like it does on the OLED Switch, then it's all good, it's all game. But I'm still experimenting with different headsets because different headsets have different sound. You have to find the right headset that mesh well with the Nintendo Switch. And that's one thing I could say the PC handhelds have over the Nintendo Switch was the sound. The sound is a lot better because any headset you throw at it is going to automatically sound good. And if you have a good quality headset, it's going to sound even way better. But it seems like with the Switch 2, you have to find that right headphone setup. So I'm still going through that, and I shouldn't have to. I think if you have a quality headphone, it should sound phenomenal off the break, loud, bassy, whatever. I didn't get that with the Switch, but it's definitely not bad. I'm still experimenting on that. And also, too, speaking of sound, when you go into the menus to the audio section on the Nintendo Switch settings, it's confusing. It's all over the place. Automatic, PC, the PC sound, stereo sound. I'm like, that's a lot. And I tried switching it, and my headphones didn't even work. So it's all over the place. So I guess, and I felt that leaving it on automatic was the best option. So there you go. So the sound is just all over the place to me. It's just crazy how they have different options for different sounds, but when you click on it, it could either make it sound worse or better. But when I did hook up my Nintendo Switch dock to the TV, and because I use a sound bar for my TV as well, and that's another thing too. When the sound is so over the place to me because using my Nintendo Switch 2 docked, I felt like the sound wasn't that loud enough, and I had to crank my TV to the max. I had to like really turn it up to really like get that that loud. It just didn't sound loud enough. So I used my I'm sorry guys, I'm a little bit out of it. I was sipping a little bit, so that's why I'm a little bit slow right now. Sound bar. I used my sound bar, and what I did, I went into the sound settings on the Nintendo Switch 2 and switched from automatic to, I forget what you call that option, PC. Basically, the option that I selected for the sound was basically, it revolves around the sound bar. So when I switched it to the sound bar settings, then it sounded good. I'm like, okay, it sounds good now. It was loud. I was playing Zelda, it sounded loud. You could hear the footsteps, you could hear every little detail. So you have to be meticulous when you're selecting a sound profile. You have to be specific with the Switch 2. That's what I noticed. So if you're using a sound bar, in short, you have to select the sound bar settings. If you're using headphones, you may have to use the stereo settings. That's all I'm saying. So it does give different sounds, and some sounds way better than others, some sound worse than others. You just have to find that sweet spot depending on if you're using a sound bar, headphones, or you're playing from the TV. But yeah, so what's the next thing that I didn't like? See, there's not that many things I didn't like, but it just goes back to they had 8 years to make this system perfect. That's what I'm saying. So it seems like to me Nintendo was just sitting on their hands for 8 years and just try to like do things at the last minute. I'm gonna speak on something very important. The battery life, that's kind of tricky. I feel like you may get a little bit less, than the OLED Switch or even the Redbox model Switch, depending on the game that you're playing. So the Switch 2, you're getting anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. So I'm guessing the 6 hours, that's probably playing an indie game, which I've never really tested. I've seen videos on YouTube. Somebody told me having the brightness at 50% and the sound settings not too high, they have actually gotten 3 hours out of Zelda. I forgot what Zelda are we talking about? Are we talking about the 2D top-down Zelda, or are we talking about Tears of the Kingdom? But I'm gonna go ahead and say I think he said he played Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, one of those two Zelda games, and he got 3 hours, which I think that's way more than solid. But I've noticed that battery life dies quick, even if you're not using the system. That's what really got me. So if you're downloading games, even if you're at 100%, I looked at it, it went from 100% to 64%. And one time I looked at it, it was at almost died, 15%. So just having your system idle like how it is right now, sitting on my bed, just having it idle if it's on with the Wi-Fi on, your battery will drain. But what I loved about the OLED model Switch and the Redbox model Switch, even if you left your system idle, you just hit the power button up in the sleep mode, like the battery life will still be where you left it. But with the Switch 2, it'll drain on you, even if you're not using it. I did not like that. Now, as far as playing the games go, I don't really know yet. I've never really sat there and timed it. I'm bad at doing stuff like that, but I'm gonna have to test that out. And normally when I play my Nintendo Switch, even the OG model Switch, I always play with the Wi-Fi off, because we all know playing with the Wi-Fi on will drain your battery a lot faster, especially with the Switch 2, I believe. So, but it's kind of funny because this time around, I feel like I'm also want to leave the Wi-Fi on, because now it's worth it, because you can do so much more with the Switch 2. You can do a video chat. Your friends might pop up and try to talk to you, and you can video chat them. Whereas with the OG Switch, there was no need for you to actually keep the Wi-Fi on, because you can't do anything. You can't video chat with your friends, so why do you have the Wi-Fi on? So I always play my Wi-Fi off. But with the Switch 2, I find myself using the Wi-Fi. With the Switch 2, I find myself leaving the Wi-Fi on while I'm using the system, just because of my friends list. Somebody may try to like video chat me or something. But yeah, so I actually think they should have used a bigger battery. I think they're dealing with megahertz on the battery, they're not going by the watts. I think they should use a battery. They should have went with a battery similar to these PC handhelds. If they have done that, even if they had put a 20 watt or 40 watt battery in the Switch 2, I believe we would have gotten way more than 2 to 6 hours. Like playing a game like Cyberpunk or any AAA game for that matter, we probably would have gotten like 3 to 5 hours playing any AAA game, for the simple fact, remember, the Switch 2 is not a PC handheld. It's designed specifically for gaming, and the ARM chip is designed to be more efficient. Matter of fact, is more efficient than the build of, say, a ROG Ally and a Steam Deck, or whatever the case may be. Any PC handheld for that matter. So I definitely could see you getting 3 to 5 hours on the Switch 2 with any AAA game, because it's using an ARM processor. It's a lot different from what these PC handhelds are using. So Nintendo skimped out on the battery. So the battery was another gripe. I guess it's not so much of a big deal for right now. I have to get back to you on that with more testing. So yeah, I think they kind of dropped the ball on the battery. They should have put a big 20 watt or 40 watt battery at least in the Nintendo Switch. Now, last but not least, and I say that because I may have one more thing I would add as I'm talking to you guys, is the library. I saw somebody and they said the Switch 2 had a worse launch library than the OG Switch. Really? Really? They must have been smoking when they said that. And the YouTuber that said that, I actually like him, so I'm not even going to call him out. It's not even for me to call him out. I don't want to be disrespectful, but really? You guys really think the Switch 2 launch library was worse than the OG Switch? Because the only good game, big retail game that Nintendo actually had for the OG Switch at launch, and this is during a time where developers were upset with Nintendo. They was not trying to deal with Nintendo at all. The only big game they had on the OG Switch that carried the Switch and made everybody believe it was Breath of the Wild. That's one game. Then you had 1, 2, 3 Switch. That's not a bad game. A lot of people hate on that game, but I like that game. It's a family game. It's a game you play at parties, so that's really a good game, actually. If you're looking for a good party game, that's what it is. But you can't put a game like that against a high caliber adventure game. It doesn't make any sense. So in a sense, it really doesn't count. Then you had Bomberman. Like, really? Like, I mean, they barely had any games at launch. That's crazy to me. Now, the eShop, you had Am Setsuna, which is a great game. That's an RPG from Square Enix. And how ironic, we got Bravely Default for the launch title for Switch 2. So, okay, you had a few King of Fighters games, Fatal Fury games on the eShop. The rest you had Snipper Clips, which is a decent game too, but like I said, it's a party game. You really can't compare that to a high caliber adventure game. So let's put things into perspective. They had Zelda, which was the only good retail game. You had 1, 2, 3 Switch. You had Bomberman. You had I Am Setsuna on the eShop. You had Fast RMX. I forgot about it again. That's my game right there. You had Snipper Clips. You had King of Fighters and the Fatal Fury games. So I forgot what else was there. It may have been more games, but let's just say 8. We're going to say 8. Those are 8 games, right? Those are the games. So let's look at the Switch 2 launch lineup. We had Cyberpunk. We had Street Fighter 6, Bravely Default. Yeah, it's a remake, but it's a good RPG game. You had Split Fiction, Yakuza 0. You got that little Pure Tetris game. I think that was I think they also had that for the Nintendo Switch OG launch as well. So that's 6 right there. You have Gardens of Azuma, Fast Fusion. Did I say Yakuza? And there are some other games on that, like Capcom game they have online. So even the other games I can't really remember. The Switch 2 had a better line. Oh, and not to mention, look, speaking of Zelda, so they re-released the Switch 2 edition of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. So that's 10, 11 games, right? So there you go. So there's no way the OG Switch had a better launch lineup. The OG Switch had a terrible launch lineup, especially depending on the taste that you have for video games. So if you don't have the same taste as me, the only game for you to get was Zelda, and a lot of people only got it for Zelda. This time around, I've seen people on YouTube saying that they're going to buy every single game that they launched for the Switch 2. Because all the games they launched for the Switch 2 is pretty good, even though they are ports of games that's already on the Series X and the current consoles pretty much, and last gen consoles. They're still good games nonetheless. Those games weren't on the Switch OG 2017 model at launch, so there's no way, hands down, the Switch 2 had a worse launch library than the OG Switch. From a perspective, I get what he was trying to say, but he was dead wrong on that. Yes, I think as far as the library goes, they could have done a lot better, man. For the system to be in development for 8 years and Nintendo was stingy with the development kits, they should have had an influx of games. They said they were going to launch with like 25 to 30 games, but I did not see that. I guess most of those games are being spread out. And I guess it's a good, I don't know, man. And so that's about it. I don't really have anything else to say bad about the Switch 2. People are just hating. If you have anything bad to say about the Switch 2, like I see those hate videos, you're just hating, man, because the Switch 2 is doing better than your favorite system. There's nothing really much to not like about the Switch 2. If you like the OG Switch, you're gonna love the Switch 2. You're gonna buy the Switch 2. The Switch was the best system last generations. They outsold the competition 8 years in a row. That's not luck. That's not luck at all. So they outsold the competition for a reason. it was definitely the most creative system in the past 8 years, the best system in the past 8 years. So Nintendo looked at that situation like, yo, we already have something great, so there's no need for us to change or alter the system. So I don't know what people are talking about. I don't know what they expected with the Nintendo Switch 2, because in many ways it kind of shattered expectations. They took what they had that was already good and they made it great. Like, what do you want them to do? They get you complain about the graphics, you complain about the frame rate. They fixed that with the Switch 2. Switch 2 had significantly better graphics that's on par in comparison to the PS5. You have higher frame rates, 60 FPS, you have 120 FPS, you have HDR, and you have video chat. And not to mention the gimmick, not even a great gimmick at that. You have the mouse mode, and I forgot to mention that. You have the mouse mode, you can turn the Joy-Cons into a mouse. You can also use a keyboard on the thing. So what are these people talking about? Just stop hating. They took what they had that was already great and they made it way better than it ever was. And despite all the hate that Nintendo got with the Switch 2, the same people went out and bought the damn system. You sat here, you came out with a video, you came out with countless videos, all these stupid YouTube hate videos, and the same people went out and bought the damn system. But I'm not surprised. That's hypocritical. I don't know if that's a new generation thing. You talk about something, how much you hate it, you go and buy it. I know people who had the OG Switch, loved it, but then they'll turn their cameras on and talk about how terrible it is. That doesn't make any sense to me. You need to question your life, to be honest with you. But the Switch sold, what, like 3 million in 24 hours? It's the biggest launch ever. And I've seen people hate on the Switch say, well, the Switch 2 didn't sell out like people thought it would. Yes, it did. And if your retail store still have a few Nintendo Switch 2s in there, that's because Nintendo took a year to 2 years off to mass produce this system because they know it was going to be a big launch. They knew that people want this thing. They knew it was going to sell, so they made as many systems as they could. Also to beat tariffs and to beat those scalpers, and they did just that. So if you can find a Switch in your local retail store, you're just lucky. You should get it. And that only says to me that everybody bought it. I know some people at Target. Target employee told me that they had 130 Nintendo Switches, which is crazy, by the way, and they sold it in like less than half a day. He said a couple of hours to be exact. PS5 didn't do that. PS4 didn't do that. And we know people say, oh, the PS5 sold out. Yeah, because they didn't have that many to go around. And if you look at the sales now, I think the PS5 is at 77 million, right? So pretty much everybody who wanted a PlayStation 5 already has a PlayStation 5. You're going to have a few stragglers here and there that want an extra PS5, or they just want a PS5, they still on their PS4. But that's very far and few. But those few still count. But at the end of the day, PS5 only sold out because they didn't have that many. They did not have 130 PS5s in the store. Hell, if I have 135 PS5 in the stores right now, they'd be sitting on store shelves. They wouldn't be selling because the PS5 isn't really all that. I just saw a direct from Sony, and they do got some bangers, so they can probably move some PS5s now, but only time will tell, because we all thought the PS5 and the PS4 was going to crush the Nintendo Switch 2, the OG Switch, but it didn't. It was the opposite way around. So even the PS6 comes out, it's not going to be messing with the Switch 2 either. Steam Deck 2 come out, it's not going to be messing with the Switch 2 either. It doesn't matter if it's more powerful. It doesn't matter. All that power stuff, all that who got the best graphics stuff, days are over. For the most part, the most powerful system never really won a generation per se, for the most part. So people just want to play and enjoy games. That's it. Yeah, people gaming on mobile, tablets, they don't care about the graphics. Nobody thinks about the graphics. The Wii U, Actually, the Wii proved that. The Wii was significantly weaker than the 360 and the PS3. A 480p system beat a high definition 1080p system. Just all creativity, games, and the way how you play those games. So stop it. The Switch 2 is about to dominate just like the OG Switch did. Right now, the Nintendo and the Switch is off to a very, very great start. That's just what it is. And at first I was a little bit skeptical about when the honeymoon phase is over, but they got so many games coming down the pipeline, it's not even funny. The only thing Nintendo has to do, and I saw it, well, whatever. The only thing Nintendo has to do, really, is just make sure those games come and make sure those games run at 60 FPS, 60 FPS at the least. No more 30 FPS, not even 40 if you can help it. As long as these games can run and those games come and they run like they should, the Switch 2 will be alright and it will do just as good as Switch 2. Now you have the haters that keep on moving that goalpost again. Oh, I bet you the Switch 2 is not going to sell more than the Switch 1. It doesn't have to sell more than the Switch 1. PS2 wasn't even the best system. PS3 was a better system than the PS2. The PS3 sold significantly less than the PS2. So how's a system that's going to be significantly better than the PS2 sell less? How does that make sense? You get what I'm saying? No system. Whenever a system breaks a record, and even if they come out with a better system, that system is expected not to sell more. A lot of variables come into place when it comes to that. You have more competition. There's more competition now. A lot of people nowadays, they have multiple systems. People don't buy one system anymore. So when you look at the sales of a PlayStation 5 that only sold 77 million, okay, the rest of those sales, the Switch ate into their sales, and maybe the Xbox ate into their sales, and maybe the PC ate into their sales. So that's just how it is. There's more competition. The more competition, the less you're likely to sell. Doesn't mean your system isn't better than the previous one. It's just that things change. Lightning doesn't strike twice, man. I do not. Actually, it's so funny. Like, I never really thought about if the Switch 2 would sell more than the Switch 1 because it doesn't really need to. If the Switch 2 sells 100 million, they're good. Even if they sold 80 million, is good. But it would be kind of disappointing if it did sell 80 million. But on the track, the way how they're moving, I don't even see that happening. Especially with the first party titles coming. We got Metroid coming. We're going to have another Metroid game coming. We have Mario games coming. A Smash Brothers coming. Fire Emblem. We got so many bangers. Another Splatoon game. Another Bayonetta game. We still got Punch-Out. We still got Kid Icarus. We still got Mother. We still got plenty of games that Nintendo left on in the vault that it hadn't even put out yet. So there's no way. The least I see the Switch 2 selling is 100 plus million. And even if they sold 100 million, 101, 102, that's still a success. If they sold 130 million or 120 million, that's still considered a success. Anything over 100 or at least 100 on the nose is still considered a success. I do not see the Switch selling less than 100 million. Now, I don't know if it's going to sell more than the OG Switch. Like I said, it doesn't need to. But if they bring out all the games, all those first-party games, even games that they haven't brought out in years, and even with third-party developers, they got big third-party support. They got the GTAs and all these other games. And, these third-party games can run at 60. Oh, yeah. And they keep it on the market for the same time, 8 years or better. Yes, I do see it significantly selling more than the Switch 1. But they have to do it right. If it stays on the market for 8 years, they get all the third-party games, and they run decent, plus the first-party IPs, yes, they can do it. The Switch 2 was built to last for years, man. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. So that's all I got to say. It was a long video, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. But I had to cram everything into one video. I had to express my thoughts, man. And all you Switch 2 haters out there, man, I don't know, man. I don't even know what to tell y'all, man. Like, it didn't work. Your plan didn't work. People still went out and bought the Switch 2. They loved it. They're loving it, and they're liking it. That's it. That's it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. The Switch last generation was the best console. It was a higher selling console. And the Switch 2, it just improved upon what they did with the OG Switch. So there you go, man. Switch 2, congratulations, Nintendo. Your successful launch for the Nintendo Switch 2. People love the system. They have it in their hands, and there's no complaints, man. There's no way you can have the system in your hand and complain about it, man. The system is great. I don't see anything that's bad about it. Whatever, man.